Hey everyone, how you doing? And welcome to another episode of the John Riley Project. It's October 30th. Tomorrow's Halloween, and maybe even scarier, Election Day is on November 5th. How you doing? Hey, you know what we're going to do today? We're going to actually sit down and I'm going to fill out my ballot. I'm going to take my ballot. You can hear I got it. This is the mail-in ballot. We're going to go through this whole thing together on this podcast. And I'm going to share with you what I'm voting on and why I'm voting on it. And I invite your thoughts and comments and questions. So if you're watching the live stream on Facebook, on YouTube, or on X, you're welcome to come in and type in your comments and thoughts, and I'll try to get you involved in the conversation. But welcome. Thanks for joining me. It's been a while. I keep creating my own barriers to doing more podcast episodes. A lot of people in my hometown of Poway have been saying, John, where you been? What have you been up to? Now, I tell you, I do two podcasts a week on sports with Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, which I love doing. And then, life gets in the way, and, we kind of create roadblocks in our head. And sometimes I'm not out in front of the camera with you on my own project, the John Riley Project. Well, I'm here today. We are going to go through the ballot head to toe. And I'm going to share with you how I'm voting. I even have my black Sharpie marker, and we're going to fill in the ovals together. Okay. That's how this is all going to go. Okay. So, all right. So my 2024 ballot, we'll look at the national level, the local, and the propositions. And here's a comment here from Brave Sailor. Hello, John. Nice having coffee with you last week. I think that might be Daniel. Daniel, nice to meet you finally as well. All right, so let's go through this. And on my ballot here, we've got the federal races. There's some races for U.S. Senator, U.S. Representative, State Assembly, for schools, although not for Poway Unified. County Board of Supervisors, and then all the propositions, including Measure H here in my hometown of Poway. We're going to break down H, and I even have my thoughts on the District 2 and District 4 races here in Poway. Okay, let's get started, and we'll start at the top of the list. This is the one that everyone is gripping about, and it's for President of the United States. Okay, let me say up front, and I think you know this about me if you've already watched. I am not a Republican and I am not a Democrat. I am a registered independent. I've been registered independent for over 10 years. And I'm a registered independent because I don't like the Republicans and Democrats. And, for prior to being independent, I have been a member of the Libertarian Party, but that whole party has gone bananas, even though I agree with many, but not all of their positions on a wide range of issues. Philosophically, I'm sort of in that camp. Kind of, but not really. Independent is really the place that I am. So I'm not a big hardcore Trump guy. In fact, I don't like Trump, and I'm not a hardcore Democrat or Harris supporter either. So, I'm looking at this list, and there's one of the good things is that we actually have 6 choices on the ballot, plus the write-in. So there's the Democrats, Harris and Walsh. Kennedy is on the ballot here with Shanahan. There's the Libertarian, Chase Oliver, Jill Stein, the Green Party spoiler, Donald Trump, and then Claudia de la Cruz. I guess that's the Peace and Freedom Party. Okay. Let me set up a couple of ground rules here. And this is kind of how I frame this election in my mind. Okay. Number one, when I vote in an election, I am expressing my values. I am expressing what I believe, what I like, what I support. And by not choosing candidates, I'm also expressing my values on who I don't support. So I'm not going into this voting booth. And this, by the way, this podcast is the voting booth. But when I go into the voting booth, I'm not thinking in my head, I got to vote for this guy, because if I don't, then it's a wasted vote. And then my vote really counts for someone else. And people go through all of this calculus, these mental gymnastics to try to say a vote for candidate C is really a vote for candidate A. And it's just nonsense. So number one, my main objective for this presidential election is Trump must lose. Trump must lose. Trump is a disgrace. Now, it's well documented, all the things that people don't like about Trump, but I kind of come at it from a different angle. I'm a big believer in our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's baked into the United States Declaration of Independence, right there in the preamble. You probably learned that as a child. And so that is kind of the measuring stick that I use to see if any of these candidates are worthy. And Trump fails badly on this. Now, we're going to set his character aside, which is abysmal, and his character alone is good reason to vote no. Let's just set that aside for a minute, and let's just talk about the policies, because the policies are what the Republicans are always saying, oh, he's not a really good guy. You don't have to be his friend, but his policies are good. No, his policies are terrible. They're terrible. Okay, so first of all, this whole anti-immigrant rhetoric is un-American. I mean, it violates the basic core of who America is. This is a nation of immigrants. And on top of it, we all have inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that doesn't just mean Republicans and Democrats. That doesn't mean, Americans. It means everybody. We're all created equal. We all have a right to our own life. And by demonizing a set of immigrants, whether legal or illegal, it's just like creating, identifying subhumans that aren't worthy of having the same rights as everyone else. That rhetoric on its face is disqualifying. His idea with tariffs is economic nonsense. Tariffs are going to increase prices on goods for American consumers, because we're either going to have to pay higher prices in the form of an imported good and a tariff on top, or we have to buy the domestic product that's already very expensive. So tariffs end up penalizing American consumers. It's a tax. It's a tax. And then the idea of replacing the whole income tax system with tariffs is just another mind-boggling idea. So tariffs are a rotten policy. Him appointing justices that ended up overturning Roe v. Wade, which was clearly a strategy. Not that I ever believed Donald Trump actually has any guiding principles on a woman's right to choose. He doesn't. He just picks the calculated, positions that will gain him the necessary support. So Trump is a con man and needs to be removed from office. So then you probably think, well, okay, then you must be voting for Harris. Like, no, I don't like her either. I mean, not only is she for the border wall, she's for tougher immigration at the border, which I think is the wrong idea. She's also, for tariffs and trade wars, maybe to a lesser degree than Trump. But on many other issues, like this rhetoric we always hear from the Democrats, the rich and the corporations need to pay their fair share. Or what in the hell is that? I mean, they never define fair share. And now they've rolled out this plan that they want to tax unrealized gains. I mean, I'm sorry, but this is theft. I mean, if people say, well, no, it's no big deal. This taxing of unrealized capital gains is just for rich people. You're not rich, are you? It's just for the uber rich. Well, that doesn't make a difference. The fact is that it's theft. And it doesn't matter if you're stealing from the uber rich, it's still stealing. And, because capital gains, unrealized capital gains are like the equity in your home. When the equity in your home goes up, you shouldn't be taxed more. And yeah, property taxes are done that way in California, which is a BS rule in my opinion as well. So when your equity in something increases, that doesn't mean you've experienced any income from it. You don't get any income from it until you sell it, or if you happen to be getting dividends, but mostly if you sell it. And then that's when you would take the capital gain, you have income, and then you pay the income tax. But Democrats don't want an income tax. They want a wealth tax, which is just egregious, in my opinion. A total violation of our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, and I can go down the list a mile long for Harris. Now, I will say, if someone was sitting here and put a gun to my head and said, you got to pick Trump or Harris, who you picking? I'd pick Harris. But I don't have to pick Harris. And the reason I don't have to pick Harris is because California and the electoral college system, California is a solid blue state. There is absolutely zero chance Donald Trump is going to win California. I mean, in 2020, Joe Biden got 11 billion with a B, 11 million with an M votes, and Trump got 6 million. That was almost a 2-to-1 ratio. That's a landslide. And I think that delta, that landslide could be bigger, but it's definitely not going to be close in California. So I don't have to vote for Kamala Harris. And by the way, it is Kamala, like, the punctuation, comma law. I don't have to vote for Kamala Harris in order to block Trump, because all the rest of the California voters are going to do that for me, because California is overwhelming blue. So I'm not voting for her either. And so then I look at Chase Oliver, the Libertarian candidate, and historically I have voted for Libertarian presidential candidates, including when I've been an independent. Chase Oliver himself, not necessarily a bad guy. He seems like a decent guy, and he's had a little bit of interesting success in Georgia in previous elections. But the Libertarian Party is a train wreck. It's a mess. The leadership is just all over the place, and it's not worthy of support. So I can't fill in a bubble for them. And I'm not going to vote for Kennedy, who's not even an existing candidate, even though he's on the ballot. I'm not voting for Stein, and I'm not voting for Cruz. So what am I doing? I'm not voting at all. I'm not voting at all for President of the United States. I'm abstaining. And my choice is to not choose. My choice is not to sanction Trump or Harris, both of whom I completely disagree with. Well, maybe not completely. There are a few things that Harris has said in this campaign that got my attention. She wants to deregulate local housing zoning laws, which I think would be fantastic. I mean, the NIMBYs in my hometown of Poway would go crazy if that happened. But I think it's important that we, allow more housing to be built. Harris seems to want to do that. Harris, of course, wants to codify a road. There's certain things with Harris I like. Now, there are certain things that I could probably point out on Trump's policies that I would like, but I'm not going to go on record supporting him because I just really oppose Trump. So at any rate, I refuse to sanction either of them. I could do a write-in, but what's the point? And I don't really have a good name in mind. So I am abstaining from President of the United States. It's a long enough description. All the rest of these will go a lot faster. Okay, so I'm not filling in the box there. We're filling in the oval. Now let's move down the list. We're going to go to state senator Steve Garvey, the Dodger, versus Adam Schiff. And there's two races here, one to fill the remainder of Feinstein's term, one moving forward. Okay, I'm a big baseball fan, and I grew up a Giants fan in the 1970s, and we had to play the Dodgers all the time, and they had Say and Russell and Lopes and Garvey at first, and they kicked my Giants ass all up and down the street in the 1970s. Garvey has been an enemy of mine. And then, he came to San Diego, hit a home run here in the 84 NLCS, and that was wonderful. But still, Garvey is more of a kind of a run-of-the-mill Chamber of Commerce kind of Republican. He's conservative on social issues. And, I just can't do that. And at the same time, let's be real, he has no chance of winning here either. Adam Schiff is going to roll. And Adam Schiff, I like the way he stood up to President Trump during a lot of those impeachment hearings. But he too is like Harris, where, the rich need to pay their fair share, and he never defines what that is. It just means more. We want to take more and take more. So for senator, I'm also abstaining. Now, I don't normally do this. On previous elections, like on judgeships, where I hadn't necessarily done all the deep research, sometimes I'll abstain on that because I won't vote on a whim. I won't vote for things that I don't really support. Okay, look here. Kevin Kennedy is on the live stream. He says, Schiff lied out his ass. Adam Schiff is kind of a weenie to me. I mean, I can't see supporting that guy at all. And it's a shame. Remember, it used to be in these elections that we would have 3 or 4 or 5 choices on the November ballot. But California changed the rule, and we have this thing called the top 2 rule. And so you'll notice that you don't get to pick from other parties. In fact, there's one race where there are 2 Republicans, and that I'm going to go over in a moment. But there's not even a place to put in a write-in. So screw that. I'm not going to have to take a pick from 2 terrible things. I might like one slightly more than the other, but that's like picking between brain cancer and heart disease. Pick one. Well, I don't, if I'm faced with a selection like that, I won't pick either. So for senator, I'm abstaining. For the 48th congressional representative, okay, this is for the House of Representatives. Darrell Issa is the incumbent. Darrell Issa is the guy that has supported Trump and has been kind of arrogant about that. Really, does he even live in the 48th district? This represents a lot of East County and here in my hometown of Poway. Last I checked, Issa lives in Vista, so I'm not an Issa fan. Now, his competitor, Stephen Houlihan. Now, I checked out his website. He's embracing the freedom message for Democrats in much the same way that the Democrats did in their convention, particularly with Harris, kind of, retaking the freedom word. But for them, it really only applies to abortion and in some cases, gay rights, but they don't go the full distance on freedom. And the Republicans, by the way, talk about freedom, but they want to build border walls. So neither side really supports freedom. But if Houlihan would win, I would have a chance to hold him accountable on freedom, which would be nice. But I'm not going to support either of these guys either. And by the way, ICE is going to probably win this thing in a landslide. So I'm abstaining on that one. Now, I will be voting on some of these. It's just that it turns out that a lot of these, I don't really give a hoot. State Assembly. My choice is Carl DeMaio or Andrew Hayes. In this case, both Republicans. When Carl DeMaio first entered the scene here in San Diego, and he was a city councilman in San Diego, I kind of liked him. He had a little bit of a libertarian streak. He really wanted to cut down on spending. He wanted to reform the way retirement plans were done for government employees because they were just way the hell too generous. And that was what was sinking the city into a deep deficit. And he wanted to transform them into more of like 401k types of plans, et cetera. And I thought, hey, this guy's a breath of fresh air. But now he seems more like a charlatan to me. He seems like a guy that he'll say whatever he needs. He's always got some big campaign going. He's always fundraising off of something. And DeMaio has run so many times and lost. And it makes me wonder if he's just a political animal living off the fundraising, or if he really wants to win one of these elections. And, he's going up against Andrew Hayes. And I got a mailer telling me that Andrew Hayes was an extreme MAGA right-winger. And that mailer came from Carl DeMaio and his supporters, which further proves that DeMaio is just not trustworthy. That's why I think he's kind of like a charlatan. But as far as the other candidate, Andrew Hayes, again, he seems like another kind of, Republican, in some cases a little bit MAGA, and I'm not digging that. So in this case, again, I'm served up two terrible choices. I'm not picking either. We get down to school board education, 4th district. And this is between Aaron Evans and Sarah Song. I'd like to vote for a teacher. Aaron Evans is a teacher, but Aaron Evans is mostly a social justice warrior. If you look at her website, she's all talking about, equity issues and social justice. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is about education, which seemed to be very deprioritized. Her opponent is Sarah Song, who is a curriculum developer. And I thought to myself, does that mean she works for a company that sells stuff to school districts, like textbooks or things like that? Sure enough, she does. She sells, that she develops and sells curriculum that school districts are, around America use. That seems a little bit like insider trading to me as well. And so in this case, I'm not voting for either one of them. But now finally, I have a race that I actually feel like someone is worthy for my vote. And this is for Palomar Community College District, trustee number 4. And my choices here are Holly Hamilton-Bleakley, Amir Admire, and Michelle Raines. Okay, Amir Admire appears to be a paper candidate, a non-serious candidate, and so he's instantly dismissed. Michelle Raines seems like kind of a straightforward sort of a school board character that you might think would work well here for the community colleges. But Holly Hamilton Bleakley, her job caught my attention. She's a professor. I think it was at USD. And what caught my attention is that she speaks on moral philosophy, political philosophy, applied ethics, free speech, freedom of thought. And I'm like, hey, this is my person. She's a Republican. I'm not, but I'm actually going to vote for her. So that's the first bubble that I'm filling in on my ballot for Holly M. Hamilton Bleakley. County Board of Supervisors is next on my list. This is between Gina Jacobs and Joel Anderson. Joel Anderson is the incumbent. I went to one of Joel Anderson's holiday parties once. This is probably about 10 years ago or so. He took up the whole Toyota dealership in El Cajon, and it was like it was a production. I think back then, was he in the House of Representatives? He might have been. I can't remember. Or maybe he was in the State's Assembly or the State Senate. At any rate, it was a production. He, again, seems to me more like a Chamber of Commerce, gun rights kind of a Republican. And so to me, it's just kind of, there's nothing there for me. And Gina Jacobs seems like a nice person, but she seems like a very unserious challenger, unless, of course, Jacobs means she's part of the Irwin Jacobs Qualcomm family. And if that's the case, she might have some big money behind her. I don't really have any compelling reason to cast my vote for either of them, so I abstain. You see how I kind of do this on the ballot? I don't feel like I have to pick. If it doesn't feel right, then why force it? So I don't. Okay, let's get to the propositions, because these I voted on every single one of them. These are the ones that probably you might be interested in, ideas and thoughts and clarifications. So let's go through it. Prop 2. This is to authorize school bonds, $10 billion in school bonds for K through 12. Okay, so school bonds are a thing here in Poway, right? We kind of got all excited about the school bond crisis, scandal that happened here in Poway about 15 years ago. And Kevin Kennedy on the live stream is saying there's lots of bonds and taxes and everything else. And we're going to go through all these. So I am, generally speaking, no on all taxes and no on all bonds. And you've got to really convince me to switch off of that default. Now, in the case of school bonds, I'm particularly prickly because of what happened here in Poway with our $1 billion bond. In fact, I ran for school board in 2014 specifically against that particular topic. I only lost by 1%. It was close. Well, at any rate, I'm prickly about school bonds, and they've been trying to pass another school bond here in Poway. And my argument against that is the same reason I'm against Prop 2. And that is, why do you keep coming to taxpayers for more money for your facilities? When I, see a private college or a private K through 12 school, it's not like they attach a line item on my property tax bill and force me to pay it, with the threat that if I don't pay it, they'll seize my home. So I'm of the opinion that, these schools need infrastructure improvements. The state has plenty of money. Just allocate money from the existing budget. Whether it's from the overall state budget, and state legislatures need to give more percentage of the budget to the schools for infrastructure, then do that. Or have the school districts themselves self-finance their own bonds, rather than asking for an additional, tax on top of local taxpayers. To me, that's wrong. To me, we have in Poway, we haven't even started paying for the $1 billion bond. That it was passed in 2008 and maybe 2010. I think it went through another iteration. We don't start paying on that until 2032, I think, and then it goes for 20 straight years. And they're asking for more money locally for bonds, which, by the way, is not on the ballot. That's coming. But here, this is statewide. So I'm a big no on this one. No, I believe they have infrastructure needs. I just think they need to get the money from somewhere else. Okay, number 3, Prop 3 is the constitutional right to marriage. Okay, this one, seems like it's mostly a cleanup. Remember Prop 8? When was that? Back in 2008, I think. Prop 8 was the measure to make gay marriage illegal. It was marriage must be between a man and a woman. And you remember that passed in California, which surprised me because California being rather progressive. But it is still kind of ridiculous, don't you think, that the government's telling us who is allowed to get married amongst consenting adults, telling you that it's legal or illegal for you to marry the one you love. They shouldn't be involved in this at all. Now, this particular measure doesn't necessarily change the law. The courts ruled that Prop 8 was unconstitutional, and so that short-lived, where gay marriage was illegal, was only short-lived. This is mostly cleaning up the language in the Constitution. So it says that that everybody has a fundamental right to marry, regardless of sex and race. Okay, this is kind of a cleanup thing. It's aligned with what I already believe. So that's a yes. Prop 3 is a yes. So 2 is a no. 3 is a yes. Okay, let's go down the list. The next one are Prop 4, authorizing bonds for safe drinking water, wildfire prevention, and protecting communities and natural lands from climate risk. This is also a $10 billion bond. Okay. Do we support these things? Safe drinking water, wildfire prevention, protecting communities and natural lands from climate risk. Well, of course, we all support that. Very few people would probably be against that. The question is what are you going to do about it, and who should pay for it? So here in San Diego County, where I live, it is my opinion that our local leaders have done a pretty good job as it comes to the issue of water. Now, granted, water is a major issue in the state of California, and particularly in Southern California, here, especially here on the coast. But I look at what San Diego has been doing. They extended the dam over at what's the dam over there in Lakeside? The name is escaping me, but there's a big dam right there, like right by the rock quarries in Lakeside, San Vicente, Reservoir San Vicente. They extended that dam, and now it holds a lot more. I know they're working on fixing Lake Hodges Dam, and they've probably done more infrastructure improvements over time. But perhaps even more importantly, in San Diego, we have the desalination plant in Carlsbad that, if I recall, produces about 10% of the total water in the county. And the city of San Diego has the Pure Water Initiative, which recycles water from our homes, used for everything in our homes. Some people call it toilet to tap, but the water that comes out of Pure Water Initiative is cleaner than the water that we get from the Colorado River. And so I love all this innovation that we're doing with water. So why, if San Diego is already taking care of its business, why do we need to pay for people to improve their infrastructure up near Sacramento? That's my challenge to this whole thing. So I'm voting no on this. What'll probably happen is this is going to pass, and the voters will thus force us in San Diego, who are being more responsible on water, to now pay for other areas to have their water systems improved. So that I'm voting no, but I expect it to pass. Okay, Prop 5 allows local bonds for affordable housing and public infrastructure. Okay, with a 55% voter approval. Okay, this one, by the way, is a great example of the whole idea of, if you can't win, then change the rules so you can win. Because they did this with school bonds a number of years ago. And if you remember, to pass school bonds previously used to require a supermajority of 2/3. But they could never pass the school bonds because they always seemed to get like around 58 to 59%. So what they did is they said, okay, let's move the threshold from 2/3 down to 55%. Voters approved that. By the way, you only need 50% to approve that part of it. Voters approved it, and now school bonds only need a 55% rate to pass. So this is essentially what Prop 5 is doing, the same thing, but for affordable housing. So they want to lower the threshold from 2/3 to 55%, in order to pass bonds that are going to be used for affordable housing. Okay, let's really break this whole thing down. Okay, we all should agree that housing prices in California, in San Diego, even in my hometown of Poway, California, are outrageous. Pricing for housing is insane. Pricing to buy a house, buy a condo, God forbid you're a first time home buyer, it's hard. Finding affordable places to rent is very difficult. I mean, after all, we are in America's finest city. There's a lot of business opportunity here. There's a lot of people that want to move here. They want to be here for the climate and all the other amenities that's offered. There is tremendous demand for housing. And that demand is making prices go up. And when government officials block the development of housing or slow down the development of housing, this goes back to Econ 101. You have high demand and the supply is too low. The supply is not keeping up with the demand. And that's why the prices go up. So people say, well, we need to make housing more affordable. And we do. But how? Because if we make housing more affordable by providing, by doing these bonds to provide more cash resources for buyers to buy, that means that you're just increasing the demand part of the equation. Now you're going to have more buyers all pounding in, or more renters all jumping in to take advantage of housing opportunities at today's very high prices. And because there'll be increased demand, there's going to be increased prices. They aren't addressing the supply part of this issue. So in this particular case, I say, it's backwards in the first place. The answer to the housing crisis in California is to build more housing. Just let private developers build more housing. And so what'll end up happening is that these brand new apartment buildings and brand new single family homes are going to have people that are existing home buyers or homeowners that'll want to move up, that'll want to upgrade, take advantage of the economic opportunity. And, as people get older, they often will upgrade homes. So the new stuff is for people that already have homes. So what ends up happening is people move out of their middle-class homes, their starter homes. They move out of less expensive rentals to move into these brand new facilities. And that frees up less expensive inventory to address affordable housing. So you don't necessarily need to build new affordable housing units. You just need to build more units. And then affordable housing will be the result of that process. So the whole thing is backwards here. But even on the basis of if you're losing the deal, you change the rules to win, that on its face is reason to say no. So I'm going to vote no on Prop 5. Okay, Prop 6 eliminates the constitutional provision allowing involuntary servitude for incarcerated persons. Legislative constitutional amendment. This is an interesting one. So it kind of addresses what we think the purpose of prisons should be. We got another comment here. Kevin Kennedy said El Cap. Yeah, was it El Capitan Reservoir? That might have been one too. I mean, a lot of those reservoirs are increasing the size of their dams. But let's get back to this. Prop 6, involuntary servitude. I mean, that's basically slavery. We can nuance this of the differences, but that's essentially what this is. They're taking prisoners that are in prison for whatever crime they committed and forcing them to work. It kind of reminds me of the Chain Gang. What was that movie? Cool Hand Luke. Remember, it was what we have here is a failure to communicate. And so this reminds me of the Chain Gang, where they take the guys out and they're pounding rocks, or they might be doing more legitimate forms of work. Now, this all kind of goes back to what is the purpose of prisons? What are our moral values? And how can we use those to guide us in this decision? Now, again, I'm a supporter of our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We all have a right to our own life. But if someone violates the right of others, murder, assault, rape, theft, I mean, we can make a list for all those people that are in prison, or most of them that are in prison are there because they violated the rights of someone else, right? So that's the punishment, is that you're removed from society. And hopefully, when you come out, that you are going to have some level of rehabilitation so that you can reintegrate into society. And I know that's a difficult challenge there. But in a dream world, that's what I would hope prison would be. But when someone gets put in prison, I don't think we necessarily need to double down and provide more harsh reality for prisoners. It's not like some Old Testament eye for an eye thing, so, and then besides, this is the nation of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So we should still let prisoners be able to have some level of freedom in their cell. They shouldn't be out there being forced to work. So I am going to vote. Where's my Sharpie? Here it is. I'm actually voting yes on this one. I think that we should eliminate the provision that allows involuntary servitude. Okay. So let's move on. Prop 32 raises the minimum wage for employers with 26 or more employees. It goes to $17 an hour immediately and $18 an hour on January 1st. But if the business has 25 or less employees, then it doesn't have to go to 17 in January 2025 and then $18 an hour on January of 2026. Okay, there's a lot here to talk about. First of all, if you believe a minimum wage is like a moral thing, that you need to have a minimum level to sustain your life, or some people want a living wage. Some people think a minimum wage should be a living wage. Some people acknowledge that there's a difference, but still the minimum wage is established with a sense of a morality, from almost all people, that people, darn it, they deserve at least this much. Okay, let me take you on that premise. If that's true, then why are we setting different minimum wages depending on the size of the company? So are suddenly, your dignity and is only so good if you work for a small company, but if you work for a bigger company, then you have more dignity and we'll give you a higher minimum wage. To me, that's a conflict right there on its face. But and by the way, do we need to have higher wages in California? Yes, because housing's so expensive and taxes are so expensive. But I'm of the belief that these kind of wages should rise organically, because when there's a greater demand for employees, like there is in the marketplace, then you're going to have more demand for employees, and you're going to see a lot more people make way more than the minimum wage. I mean, only about 1 or 2% of the workforce makes minimum wage. I think there's some benefits here because I'm not a proponent of minimum wage in the first place, because I think it hurts young people. Young people without skills are the ones that are essentially blocked from a lot of these opportunities. We could have a lot more paid internships and a lot more opportunity for young people to get involved in business and start a career when they're living at home with mom and dad, working for some of these companies. So I'm not big on government being a central planner and turning the knobs on what the right minimum wage should be. And it's different if you're how many people in your company and that many people in your company. To me, it's a lot of nonsense. So here, I'm going to vote no on that one. Now, that doesn't mean that I think people should be paid low. No, I want people to make a lot of money. I want you to go out there and compete. And frankly, a lot of these jobs, the entry-level jobs, are paying a heck of a lot more than that. So that's where I line up on that issue. Okay, now we're on to Prop 33. This expands local government's authority to enact rent control on residential properties. Okay, so rent control. Now, some cities have rent control. I mean, San Francisco has rent control. One of my friends lives in a rent control apartment in North Beach in San Francisco. There's rent control, I think, in Santa Monica, and there's other places where rent control is allowed. My understanding with rent control is that landlords are prohibited from raising the price on their rental any more than, I think it's like 1 or 2% each year. And in some cases, they have to hold the rent at an artificially low rate based on market conditions in order to qualify for this. Because I don't quote me on this, but I think those that provide that kind of housing are also getting some assistance to make up for it on the other side from the government, whether it's in the form of tax breaks or whatever. So in this case, though, you have to ask the question, is rent control good? The answer is no, it's not. Everywhere rent control has gone, it fails. And this is the reason why. For those places that are established as rent control, it's great for the renter. Don't get me wrong. It's great if you're a renter in a rent control place. But people in rent control rarely ever move, or they certainly move at a much lower rate than they do in non-rent control property, because they don't want to give up the sweet deal that they have that can't be taken away. So vacancy rates as a result go down. Vacancy rates, go down. So as a result, that puts more pressure on the rest of the housing market, and thus non-rent control housing becomes more expensive. And then when you have a community that has rent control, you're discouraging landlords from investing. You're discouraging landlords from making their second or third property available for rent. They might just sell it and say, screw it, I don't want to have to deal with that. You're disincentivizing the wrong things. So as a result, I'm not a fan of rent control in the first place, but this proposition gives cities greater power to enact rent control. So this is a big fat no for me. No on 33. Okay, so let's go down the list. And by the way, if you have a thought or a comment on my ballot, you think I'm full of crap, if you like what I'm doing, if you really hate what I'm doing, just type it in the live chat on Facebook, X, or YouTube, and I'll see it on my screen. I'll get you involved. I know so far Kevin and Brave Sailor are the only two that have responded, but if you got a thought, I'd love to hear it. Okay, Prop 34. This is one of those propositions that's got some good stuff and some bad stuff mixed together. And so, and usually when that happens, I'm more apt to say no. This restricts spending of prescription drug revenues by certain healthcare providers. So apparently they want to require providers to spend 98% of their revenues from federal discount prescription drug program on direct patient care. So what they're trying to do is kind of strip out a lot of the profit, a lot of the overhead, and essentially, try to streamline the costs there. Now, that sounds nice on the surface. We all want low prices for prescription medicine. But do we want to lock it in so state bureaucrats are the ones that are deciding, well, what's your cost of goods and your labor rate? And I need to calculate this. And they essentially need to micromanage the way the company does business in order to set a list price on this particular drug that meets this 98% criteria. To me, that's a backwards way of doing this. Now, further on down, it says that this is going to also allow statewide negotiation on Medi-Cal drug prices, which is very important. That's the good part of this, because they're the regulations in Medi-Cal, and frankly for Medicare at the national level, are rigged such that negotiation is illegal in California and had been illegal in DC for decades, until very recently that they finally opened that up. More negotiation is more of letting the market work. That's what we need to do, is let the market work. But this opens up part of the market and then shuts down the other part of it. So I have mixed feelings on this one, but I'm going to go no on 34. There is so much that needs to be done in healthcare reform. I just don't think this is the right answer. Prop 35 provides permanent funding for Medi-Cal healthcare services. Okay, so this was another one that I think was a bit of a mixture. What did I write about this? I said, Prop 35. And by the way, I wrote a blog on all this. If you want to read my positions, you can do so. Go to johnrileyproject.com. In the upper menu is ideas, and that's kind of my blog. And the most recent article I wrote was exactly what we're talking about here. So what I wrote for this one was Prop 35, no. And I said, this is a tax on people with healthcare insurance to pay for people without healthcare insurance. And like I said, I remember when they said Obamacare would make healthcare more affordable, but Obamacare actually made healthcare more expensive. This makes healthcare even more expensive. Now, it's great if you're on the receiving end of this, but for everybody else, it makes their healthcare more expensive. So I'm of the opinion the answer here is to open up the market and provide a more competitive marketplace. So a lot of these companies aren't able to rig the system and you don't have bureaucrats trying to micromanage the pricing. Now, part of this is that some of this is, let me see, is increased. Okay, so this one here, I'm a no on 35. I'm getting some of these things mixed, some of the detail. Okay, now let's do Prop 36. Prop 36 allows felony charges and increases sentences for certain drug and theft crimes. Okay, allows felony charges for possessing certain drugs and for thefts under 950 if defendant has 2 prior drug or theft convictions. This sounds a little bit like 3 strikes. So if this is your third offense, then that one would be a felony. Okay, again, this is another one with good and bad. There is a problem with theft, retail theft in California. If you don't believe me, look around. You go in a grocery store or into a drugstore, and entire shelving cabinets are behind glass doors and locks. No one likes seeing that, nobody does. And many people blame a previous proposition that made theft and smash and grab and these kinds of things that we've seen evidence of, made that only a misdemeanor. And so that encouraged criminals to steal more. That's probably true. It did do that. It's wrong. We shouldn't be having smash and grabs and theft and people walking into a Walgreens with a trash bag, filling it up and walking out the door and essentially doing so unchallenged. Is this the right answer here? I don't think it is, because it combines good and bad. It's good to hold people accountable for theft. Okay. In some of these cases, I don't know if we necessarily have to wait 3 strikes until they're out. I mean, if the theft is egregious enough, but certainly we can't be allowing a lot of these theft crimes to go unpunished. The problem here, though, is that it makes possession of certain drugs also a felony charge. Now, I'm of the opinion that the war on drugs is an absolute failure. I mean, it doesn't work, and on top of it, it's a violation. I'll go back to my core point that I make in all my podcast episodes. It's a violation of our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I mean, if you want to have a cocktail, I like gin martinis. If you want to have cannabis or whatever drug you need, in my opinion, that's between you and the person you get it from. This is not something that the federal government should be intervening on. Now, if you're committing crimes while high on drugs, then the crime is the problem, not the drug. So again, we have to really break down these Byzantine laws on drugs, because what it does is it ends up violating the freedom of everybody else. It empowers the police to be a lot more aggressive with these drug crimes and search and frisk and all of that. It ends up violating the rights of innocent people. So in this case, I'm voting no on Prop 36. I mean, the drug portion to this is a deal breaker to me. And even the good part of it, I'm questionable how that's implemented. And as a result, I'm a no. Okay, 2 more to go, plus my comments on Poway races. Okay, so now we're into the County of San Diego, and this is Measure G. This is to fund San Diego County transportation, infrastructure, safety projects through a 0.5-cent sales tax. And this money will be used to repair and upgrade roads and bridges and storm drains and rail lines and prevent railway bluff collapses, reduce traffic congestion, improve pedestrian and bicyclist and driver safety, improve public transit, protect wildlife and habitat, and fill potholes. And, everyone looks at that list and everyone's going to pretty much agree with everything on that list. Here's the issue. Our economy is growing. As a result, the tax revenue climbs as the economy grows, even if you don't increase the tax rate. So what I mean here in Poway, I think our sales tax is 7.75%. I think if I recall, the state of California is like 6%, and the county adds a layer, maybe 1.5, or maybe it's 1.75, and then the cities add on top of that. In fact, there are some cities in California where the sales tax is over 10%, which is just mind blowing. So here, this is to increase the sales tax to fund all of these initiatives. And these initiatives are important. The storm drain crisis that happened in San Diego, in Southeast San Diego, was horrific. I mean, neighborhoods were flooded because they didn't clear the storm drains. I mean, that's a real problem. The question is that you're already making more revenue with the same sales tax as retail revenue increases, as the economy grows. So why do we need, which is supposed to be paying for all of these things in the first place? So why do you keep coming back to the well for more? So to me, this is a no. I think these are important. I just say, okay, now county, now it's up to you to reprioritize your spending initiatives. Maybe we need to make potholes a more important concern, and maybe there's other things we need to spend less on, but you need to figure that out on your own. I mean, it's already just so ridiculously expensive to live in California. And, whether it's the cost of living, the cost of gas, taxes are outrageous, home prices and renting is really expensive. Everything's really expensive. And yet our local officials keep coming back for more. All right. And by the way, there's a sales tax increase proposal on the ballot in Escondido. And I know they've tried to pass that numerous times and have failed. So let's see I'm going to keep an eye on that because they're going through their own fiscal crisis. They have a structural deficit in Escondido. They have to fix that. So they either have to increase revenue or decrease expenses. This is another attempt to increase revenue. If that fails, they will have to decrease expenses. And I'm curious to see how that goes. Here on the live stream, Kevin said, vote yes on 36. And like I said, I have mixed feelings on it. And generally, when I have mixed feelings, I don't let it go forward. I just say, nah. If there's part of it I like and part of it I dislike, nah. Unless the part I like is of a significantly higher value than the part that I dislike. Then it's an easy decision. Then I'll go for it. But in this particular case, no, the part on the drugs, the side of it, I just think was wrong. We're already trying to liberalize recreational cannabis in California. That's a good thing. We shouldn't be trying to have more clampdown on this sort of thing. And then Kevin Kennedy says, our DA wants it and law enforcement says it'll help. Yeah, I don't disbelieve you. The portions of it that protect to greater degrees of retail theft are righteous and legitimate and will help law enforcement. Absolutely. But it also has this other part to it that's in it. So I'm saying, don't approve this one. Come back with a clean bill, one issue on the bill, and let's approve that one, rather than trying to earmark and cram other things into this. So it's a no for me. Kevin, you vote yes. I'll bet you money it passes in San Diego. I bet you it's going to pass. Okay, now let's talk about Poway. And first, we'll talk about Measure H because that's the last item on my ballot. Then I'm going to talk about our city council races, which are not on my ballot because I don't live in the appropriate districts, but I'm going to comment on them anyways. Okay, so Measure H is, and I've done so many podcast episodes on this issue. And if you follow on a lot of the Facebook social media groups in Poway, you probably have seen my name here and there. I have a lot to say on this matter. But let me explain what it is first. Okay. This is a proposal to change a previously voted on initiative in 2020 at the farm in Poway, which is a private development that's in the old location of the Stone Ridge Country Club that's just north of Espola. The original plan that was approved by voters in 2020 had kind of a specific layout of what some of this, quote, commercial space would be. There was going to be a restaurant and there was going to be a community building like a barn. There was going to be a small workout center, like, 2,000 or 3,000 feet. And they kind of had this area set aside for this. But then the developer or the leader of the development in this particular case, Kevin McNamara, wanted to do something different. He wanted to come forward with this new proposal from Lifetime Fitness, which is a dramatically bigger facility, but also includes a lot of amenities and a lot of really nice upgrades for our city. But it's expensive. It's not 24-hour fitness. It's a very high-end club, so, and it has a lot of high-end amenities. Okay. So since it was voted on in 2020, there was a question of, would this change also require a vote? The city council debated on that. In fact, I just saw something in our Poway social media groups that the audio from the meeting, or the transcript of the audio of a private meeting on this, was leaked, which is insane to think that this is happening. It's like Watergate in Poway. That the city council members were supposedly, I can't verify this, were discussing this very issue and whether or not they could push forward without a vote, and some of them were actually considering it. Again, I don't know how true all that is, but at any rate, in this particular case, because the voters had a specific vote in 2020, which I think was Measure P, this is now Measure H that's going to change the plan to allow for this commercial facility. And there are so many thoughts and comments on this from people all around Poway. So let me kind of explain all of those things. Now, just to cut to the chase, I'm a yes on H, and I think H is going to lose. I think it's going to fail. My prediction is somewhere around 40-60 is what's going to happen. But I'm going to fill in my bubble here. I'm a yes on H, and I'm going to explain why. Now, first, let's explain why to vote for H. Why to vote against H. Let me go there first. The opponents, why they don't want this. Some people say it's a violation of democracy. We already voted on this. Well, they did vote on it. And if the city council had decided to let Lifetime go in and do it and basically change what the voters voted on, then I think that's a legitimate gripe. But here, the idea was, the voters voted on it, and the only way that it could change is if there was another vote. So here we are at the other vote. So, some people call it a bait and switch. Maybe it was. Did McNamara just change his mind? I don't know. Was this all calculated in advance? Was this all a scam, a scheme? Should we all put on tinfoil hats? I don't know. I don't know. Okay. So in this case, there's people that don't want it because it violates the previous proposition that was on the ballot, right? It changes what the voters wanted. I get that. I understand it. There's the other people that are objecting to this because they're just angry about everything going on in Poway. There's all this development in Poway, and we're just sick and tired of it. And now finally, we get an opportunity to vote no, and we're going to vote no on this one. So I think there's certain people that are doing that. I think there's other people that are really in the weeds of all of this, trying to determine how many square feet and if it's commercial and does it fit in the zone and does it fit for open space recreational. And they're trying to micromanage the detail of all of this. And wondering, number one, thinking that is violating the plan in the first place. And then number two, they think it should be relocated somewhere else, like, put it up in the Poway Business Park, out to that proposed battery farm, or, right next to, the company that makes all the drones. What is that? Is that General Dynamics? I think that's out there. So there's all these different things that people are upset about. And there's also a lot of people that are just angry at city council. They don't like Mayor Voss and his cowboy hat. They don't like all of that. And so it's like whatever they say, whatever city council says, these people oppose it. There's some of that too. You have to be honest. That does exist. Now, is this a big change to the plan that was originally voted on? Yeah, it's a significant plan. That's a significant change. But here's the deal. I don't think voters should be voting on this sort of thing in the first place. This is why housing prices are so expensive in San Diego County. This is why we have a housing crisis. This is why we have a homelessness crisis. Yes, these are all linked. They are. The deal is this, is that when you have voters deciding what can be built and where it can be built and micromanaging other people's property, people that live like 5 miles away from this are really hyped up trying to micromanage what these people do on their property and saying, you can't build that, but you can build this. And this one needs I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, what happened to our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? I'm a believer in property rights. If it's your property, then you decide. By the way, I'm also pro-choice on abortion. Your body, your choice. Same principle. Your property, your choice. You should be able to choose what you do on your property as long as you're not violating the rights of everybody around you. So, like obviously if they were going to put some sort of a oil refinery there and it would be spewing, all kinds of pollution everywhere, then obviously that violates the rights of other people. But we're talking about a fitness facility, a place where people work out, and there's going to be a spa and pool and pickleball courts. This is like a recreational community thing. Is there going to be more traffic? Yeah, there probably will. But, is it going to be radical? Probably not. And, it fits. It fits in North Poway. I mean, the amenities they're describing look pretty nice to me. So I'm of the opinion we shouldn't be voting on this in the first place. But in reality, we are. And I have to accept reality. And reality is that we had Prop FF in the late 1980s that made big parts of Poway ineligible for zoning changes unless the voters approved. And as a result, we had the failed proposition in 2017 to transform Stone Ridge. We had the successful one in 2020. And now we have another one here because of the old Prop FF rule and the cascading effect of the previous votes. And here we are. So I'm voting yes, because if the property owner wants to have Lifetime Fitness on their property, I think the property owner should decide. So here I'm supporting the property owner to get what he wants. It's not because I like the property owner and Kevin McNamara, and I barely know Kevin McNamara. I've talked to him a few times. Not a friend of mine. I don't support him. I have no financial interest in this. I'm not running ads for Lifetime like certain people here are in Poway trying to, to promote Prop H. I just think that if it's your property, you should be able to decide. And we're just talking about a fitness facility. Come on. And pickleball is the rage of the nation. I love pickleball. We've been playing that a lot. I say, just go for it, and I don't like all these other people in town that are sticking their nose like Mrs. Kravitz on Bewitched, poking her nose through the blinds, trying to micromanage what other people do in their life. So this, to me, shouldn't be on the ballot, but it is. I'm voting yes. But I think no will win, because everywhere I go, and I live in North Poway, I live in Green Valley, and so there's a ton of no on H signs. They're all over the place, along with with some of the candidates, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. And then there's obviously a very loud, outspoken group on Facebook. You know who you are, Chris Cruz, and that kind of whole South North Poway votes. And then there's, the Poway Voices. And now, by the way, did you get this? There's a new thing, Poway Alliance. PowayAlliance.com. Seems like it's more of maybe a nonprofit entity. Is this a PAC? I don't know. Is this, political action committee? Is this just a lobbying group? Seems like they're going to have members. So maybe there's going to be subscriptions. So maybe this might be a financial thing. Interesting. Keep an eye on that. But obviously there's a very loud group of people that oppose H for all the reasons that I've already said. And again, they are trying to micromanage other people's lives. And I just say hooey with that. So I'm voting yes. Kevin Kennedy on the live stream chimed in and says, what do you think of how City Council has handled this issue? That's a good question. First of all, I think City Council is kind of in a weird position because of Prop FF. the voters are the ones that are supposed to decide, not the city council. So, and the city council, I think if we're all betting people, if we could all see the ballots of all of our city council members, Kalen Frank and Mayor Steve Voss and Anita Edmondson, and who am I leaving out? Brian Pepin, and of course, my guy, Peter DeHoff, District 3. I'll bet you that if we could sneak a peek at their ballot, the majority of them are probably voting on yes on H. But they're not the ones that have the ability to choose. It's the voters that choose. So they're trying to, I guess, what's the right, steward this through the process to allow the process to go in a fair and balanced way, supposedly. I'm sure people will take issue with that. I know Chris Cruz is very unhappy with how the city council handled it and how they essentially kind of changed the rules in some cases. That's real deep in the weeds if you want to go there. But I think in this particular case, the city council has to let it go to a ballot. That's the right thing to do. And they didn't, and you could tell that the public presentation that came from most of the members of the city council was kind of, how should I say this, sort of at arm's length. They weren't really weighing in with their personal opinion. It seemed like they were kind of weighing more in with just letting the process continue. So I think, the city council had this revision to the plan. McNamara and Lifetime submitted it to them. They got to take action on it. They have to consider it. They have to give it a review. Their staff gave it a review. Then it came before the city council, and then they had to decide how they were going to manage this and put it on the ballot, and kind of the maybe the strategy or the detail of how it was going to be implemented into the code of law. And so here we are. I'm not sure if there was a better way to handle it. But any way you handle this is messy, because whenever you put political people in charge of land use, then you politicize land use, which goes back to my point. Voters and politicians shouldn't be making decisions about what peaceful people do on their property. We have property rights in America. Okay. We're at an hour and 7 minutes, and I do want to talk about some of the Poway races. And let me preface it this way. I live in District 3, and it's really weird how I live in District 3. I mean, if you really look at the map, I should be in District 2. I mean, a block away, that's all I see are signs for District 2 candidates. I live in Green Valley, but I live in this one little nook of Green Valley that is not part of District 2. I'm actually in District 3. And so Peter DeHoff is my guy. So District 3, the cycle isn't happening in 2024. Peter DeHoff will come up for re-election in 2026. So I'll be able to weigh in on my guy. So I'm commenting on races that I'm not voting on. So District 2 is interesting to me. And you got 3 candidates running for District 2. Okay, one of them is Vanessa Springett. And it seemed like she was sort of a late entry into this. Vanessa, from my analysis, my investigation, appears to be someone that's been very community-minded, very active civically, active in the Green Valley Civic Association. And the Green Valley Civic Association, by the way, ran a survey of their people, and the vast majority, it was like 70%, voted against Lifetime. So most likely the majority of Green Valley is probably going to be a no on H. She's also no on H. She's really embraced that particular topic and is running with it. She's an independent candidate, which I like. I'm an independent voter, and I don't like Republicans and Democrats and how they have a duopoly on the system. So whenever I see an independent candidate, I like that. I'm excited about that. But she's no on H, and I'm yes on H. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll reserve judgment on her. Now, who are the other 2? Well, there's Tony Blaine, who came out all guns a-blazing in like the summer of 2022, before we had our 2022 election. And he had already announced he was running for District 2 in 2024. I've never seen that before, where someone was announcing their candidacy an election cycle in advance. but he did. And he was also pushing hard on the Poway term limits, which I think is a great idea. I'm a big fan of the term limits. I think we need to have turnover, and we need to have fresh blood, and we have to not allow local government to become a fiefdom for some people. Okay, so I like term limits. And Tony Blaine had his position on a lot of different issues. He came out all guns a-blazing, and he was very aggressive in his door-to-door campaign. And as a result, you could see a lot of Tony Blaine signs around. In fact, in District 2, when I'm driving around, I see probably equal numbers of Springett and Blaine signs, and then to a lesser degree, Jared Wilson. So Blaine, on the other hand, is in the military, and I used to think he was in the reserve, but then my buddy Pete was telling me no, he's like in active service, and so I was like, oh, okay. Well, if you're actively serving in the military, I don't understand how you could be a city council candidate. Maybe if you're on reserve, you could do that. Other elected officials have pulled that off. I think, wasn't Pete Buttigieg one of them? I think there's a number of them that have done that while on reserve. But then Tony Blaine didn't appear at the Poway candidate forum. I mean, what are you doing? Why are you not showing up to have an opportunity to speak to an audience of potential voters? Why are you not showing off to contrast yourself with your competition? He was saying, oh, it's going to be biased, and I'm going to hold my own event, and I invite everyone else to come. And I'm like, that's dumb. Why are you doing that? And by the way, if you've ever gone to these community forums, the questions they ask are not hard-hitting questions. They're not like the presidential debate questions where, they're very calculated and they try to get people uncomfortable. A lot of cases, these are really vanilla questions, but they do touch on the 5 or 6 big issues in our city. And it sort of tees it up for the person to make comments on that particular issue. Poway Road traffic, development, water, yada, yada. So these are really safe events, and I don't understand why you didn't go. I don't get it. So my understanding is he's not in town again. So he's a mystery to me, Tony Blaine. I don't understand. I do like his idea for term limits. I'd like to know more about him. I can't vote for him. I'm not in his district, so I don't know about him. The third guy is Jared Wilson. Okay, this is another interesting character. Jared Wilson is been involved in Poway politics. I know he served on the Budget Review Committee, and he's done a number of other things in the city. And full disclosure, I've served on the Budget Review Committee. That was a million years ago. And he is also, I gotta make sure I say that. I'm not sure if I have this exactly right, so give me a little leeway. He runs a political action committee. I think it's for the San Diego Police Officers Association. It might be the Deputy Police Officers Association or the Deputy Sheriff's Association. I'm not exactly, I can't remember the exact one. But if you remember from our previous election in 2022, and even in 2020 and previous elections, a lot of the mailers come from not the candidates themselves, but from these political action committees, because people can donate a lot more money into them. Because there's a limit on how much a candidate can take. But the political action committees are more open-ended. And there was a lot of people with business interests, particularly development people, that want to have the freedom to build in Poway. They don't want these onerous regulations that are limiting their ability to build, which I'm on their side on that issue. But the rules are the rules, and so they have to play the game because there are all these regulations. You have to make it political and therefore influence voters and influence politicians. And so this is all part of that game paying process. The fact that there's so much money from developers and outside financial interests in our town. It's been made political. So my understanding was that Jared Wilson ran that political action committee for the police or the sheriff. I don't know which one it was. That was a conduit for a lot of the money being spent in Poway. That was interesting to me. It just seemed a little weird, a little bit suspicious. But, that's the way local politics, fundraising, and one group will give it to another group who gives it to a third group. And then that third group is the one that has their name on the mailer or on the television ad or whatever it is. So he has generally speaking been on the side of the status quo as far as the city council is concerned, a supporter of Steve Voss and Kalen Frank and, kind of the whole sort of group up there. Whether you like him or dislike him, I mean, it's just a fact. He seems like he's much more aligned with them. And so, and by the way, I see less signs of his, but apparently just a ton of mailing. And we've gotten a number of his mailing pieces already because I think we sort of, again, we kind of overlap into District 2. So who's going to win? It's a three-way race, so it's hard to say. It's hard to say how this is going to break. I mean, we're going to probably end up with someone that gets less than half the vote. So I don't know, make it up, but let's assume the winner gets 40%. That means 60% will be against them. Which it means it's going to be contentious. Whoever wins will not have the support of the majority. The majority will be against the person that wins, unless by some miracle one of these three people wins by more than 50%, which I don't think will happen. If I'm a betting man in Vegas, I think Wilson wins because usually political candidates that are aligned with, kind of the existing hierarchy in city council generally do well in elections. Because I think there's a lot of sort of I remember people used to refer to this as the old Poway guard. That was the term that was used, where it was a lot of people that have been in Poway for a long time that support Poway being the city in the country, that generally support keeping Poway the way it is, that generally support a lot of our former mayors and city councilmen. And as a result, that's why you usually see a lot of the candidates that are supported by the vocal minority, they frequently lose. So in this particular case, I'm guessing Jared Wilson's going to win only because he's aligned with the group that typically always wins. Now, but Springette is the wild card. She might be able to pull it together because she has a high name recognition, high name value here in Green Valley. So she could pull it out. And like I said, Tony Blaine is a mystery to me. All right. And Poway District 4, which again, I can't vote in this, but I will offer my comment. Okay. So there's Kalen Frank, who is the incumbent. And then there's Jenny Maeda, who is the challenger, who, okay, politics aside, you have to tip your hat to Jenny Maeda. I mean, there was no one running against Kalen Frank, and she looked around and there was no one running, and so she decided to run herself. And so she got into this late, and she's trying to fight the good fight. Now, again, put her politics aside. That's kind of cool, isn't it? Where people see that they have a disagreement with the incumbent, and someone's actually doing something about it. It's like the old Teddy Roosevelt quote about, getting in the arena with the blood and the sweat and the dirt and trying to make it work, make it happen. So good for you, Jenny. Now, District 4, roughly speaking, is south of Poway Road. There's some exceptions to that, but generally speaking, that's what it is. And that is where there's a ton of development going on Poway Road, specifically on the south side of Poway Road. And there's a lot of people that are really mad about all the building. And they don't like the extra traffic on Poway Road. They don't like the extra stoplights on Poway Road. They're upset that they didn't have an opportunity to vote on this. Like, why didn't we vote on that? But we have to vote on this fitness club. Why couldn't we vote on the Fairfield project or some other of these projects for housing on Poway Road? So there's a lot of people that are angry about that. And while Jenny Maeda appears to be, I mean, she went to UCSD. That's my alma mater. So she's smart, she's a family, she's a mom, she has kids, and I'm sure she's a wonderful person, but she really does have a lot of political experience. The candidate does have political experience is Kalen Frank. Kalen Frank, that's her whole thing, being politically experienced. I mean, she worked for one of the county supervisors. Her mom, I think was it the mayor of Encinitas or was the sheriff or something like that. And she moved into Poway in District 4, and 3 months later, she was appointed on city council. Was this the one to fill in for Cunningham when he resigned or retired? It might have been. So, again, politics aside, say what you will about Caitlin Frank, she is a political creature. And I don't mean that necessarily in a disparaging way, but that's just what she is. And Jenny Maeda is a completely green, inexperienced person. So those are the two choices. Caitlin Frank has been under fire by a lot of the NIMBYs in town, the not in my backyards in town, that are angry about the development. It's interesting that there were a number of people that have been angry with Caitlin Frank for development. And some people said, that she's a sandbagger. She just moved here and she got appointed in 3 months, which is odd. And so some people have been against her from the start. Plus, she's aligned with Voss on a lot of issues. So people have been angry with Caitlin Frank, but she still won re-election. And that told me something. Went, wow, okay, well, maybe, again, there's this silent majority that's a lot bigger than the vocal minority. And I'm on Facebook. I hear and see the vocal minority. They're very loud. And by the way, the vocal minority in Poway are very loud, but they don't like other people that have different opinions voice them. Because I get on in some of those groups, South North Poway Votes and Poway Voices, and I'm just saying what I believe. I'm not attacking anyone. I'm not, demeaning anyone. I'm just taking an opposite point of view and challenging them to back up their point of view, and I get banned. It's just ridiculous. And they support diversity, equity, and inclusion, and yet they want to push other people out. Hey, they have a right to cut anyone out. I don't think they don't have to guarantee my First Amendment rights. It's a private group, private chat. I get it. You have the right to do it, but it is hypocritical to me when you keep saying you support diversity and inclusion, especially someone that's not being mean. I'm just challenging. So at any rate, given that, I was originally thinking, well, Caitlin Frank probably will win again since she won last time. But a lot has changed in the last 4 years. I mean, Poway Road especially has been flipped on its head. This election might be the one that we see as surprise. Again, I don't know. I'm not voting in this one. I'm supportive of development because we have a housing crisis, because I believe in property rights, because I think Poway Road and many other parts of Poway need to be upgraded. I like development. I'm probably the only person in this city that's, maybe me and Mike Devine are the only ones that support development, it seems, because that grows our economy and it provides job opportunities for young people, and it's going to transform Poway Road. I mean, this is all good, in my opinion. More people to enjoy Poway, more families to be able to come to our school district and settle in our city and enjoy Poway the same way we enjoy it, So I figure, yeah, come on in, and I think it's great for the people moving in, and I think it makes our community, even better. And by the way, who am I to say that you can't build on your property? But in this particular case, I originally thought Caitlin Frank would win. Now I'm not so sure. Now I'm wondering if there might be enough against Frank, specifically, not necessarily against Frank herself, but just angry at development at large. That could happen. But there's a lot of people that, everybody has a different reason for voting. Some people are very rational in their approach. Some are horribly irrational. You're probably listening to me and going on my basis of how I'm voting it. Some of you are probably saying, right on. And other people are probably saying, what the hell are you doing? Why are you thinking that way when you fill out your ballot? We all have our own different ways of voting. And it's shocking how a lot of people, don't vote, or if they do vote, they do so for insane reasons. Oh, I had a niece named Kaylin, and that's a nice name, and I'm going to vote for Kaylin. There's going to be some of that. But there's a lot of people that, might show up in mass because they're upset about no on H. I don't know. I'm not sure. It is weird though, isn't it? That and I'm going to drift back to the no on H thing, is that the vocal minority in Poway have been so angry that there's all this development in South Poway, and how come they're not building anything in North Poway? Why don't they have any commercial buildings there? And now there is one that's on the ballot, and the vocal minority in South Poway doesn't want it. And you're like, come on, you know. All right. Well, anyways, so I think District 2 will go, I predict Wilson, but I don't know. And I think Springett could surprise here. And I think Blaine is AWOL, it seems to me. And so but I predict Wilson will win. And check it out yourself. If you're no on H, then Springett is your person for sure. And then in District 4, I don't know. I'm not endorsing. I can't vote. My original instinct was Kalen to win. Now I'm not so sure. Now I'm wondering if there's enough anger in town and they're going to take it out on Kalen. I don't know if they will or not. We're going to find out. We'll see. But I could be surprised. In the end, this whole thing may pass. Okay. So any other comments on the live stream? I know I've got a very small but loyal audience that's been watching and listening. Kevin Kennedy says yes on H. Yeah, I'm a yes on H as well. Again, I don't even think we should vote on it. I just think it's silly that they have to get approval from voters just to exercise their own liberty on their own property. And by the way, providing an asset to the community, not something that takes away. It's something that people are going to enjoy. Will everybody in Poway enjoy it? No. Many will. Many won't. Some won't go there. That's okay. I mean, let people pick and choose what they want. And if you're convinced that there's not a people who are going to pay for it, then fine. Then they'll set up shop and they'll go out of business and they'll have to transform the property into something else. And McNamara and his investors will take the hit. And it'll be, or Lifetime will take the hit. And then they'll have to deal with it. So, just let the process play out. Okay. We've done an hour 30. I haven't been doing my podcast very much lately. A lot of people have been asking me, where are you? How come you haven't been doing it anymore? And I'll tell you, here's the story. And let me kind of change my background here to this. So I used to do this podcast, the John Riley Project podcast. In the very beginning in 2018, I was probably doing about 5 episodes a month. It was pretty cool in the beginning. And we had a lot of the candidates here that were involved. And then, I started after a while. I went through a stretch where I was doing a podcast episode every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And that was fun. And I remember Pete Neal says, yeah, you'll never be able to keep up with it. And he was right. I wasn't. But then I ended up hooking up with Hacksaw. And if you know Hacksaw, Lee Hacksaw Hamilton is like this legendary sports broadcaster. He was the play-by-play guy for the Chargers and the Aztecs and Arizona State Sun Devil football and USC Trojans and the Seahawks. And a legend in sports talk radio. He was a guest on my podcast and that went really well. And we ended up deciding to do our own podcast. And I do that with him twice a week, every Monday and Thursday. And that's a ton of fun. And it's growing a lot because, my John Riley project is mostly Poway stuff, San Diego County stuff. I'm trying to open up the scope of this because right now I think I'm a little too niche-y in Poway only. Even San Diego by itself is too small of a market to really support a podcast on local issues. I've tried and not getting as much traction. I get more commentary on when I make comments about national issues. And I think I might start trending in that direction while still including the local content. But it won't be the primary. Local content won't be the primary. But at any rate, I'm doing the work with Hacksaw and that's going really well. And I'm learning a lot of things. And so in the past, I used to do the whole podcast, and it'd be like an hour and a half episode like this one is, or might be 2 hours. I mean, John Carson was here when he was a candidate in 2018. We went 3.5 hours. I think Chris Olps went 3 hours, 15 with me. And those were fun. But what I was doing is I was releasing them as a full video, the whole enchilada all at once. And back then I was thinking to myself, okay, this is good, especially with political candidates. I don't want to show that I'm cutting things and editing things and trying to distort the message. I said, I just want to put it all out there in raw form and you could see it all. And, this is in 2018 where long form was kind of a weird deal. I mean, Rogan was doing it. I got a lot of my original cues from Dave Rubin, who was doing it. But what I learned with Hacksaw is that the way that he presents the information is he puts topics on the table, and he'll have like 8 or 9 or 10 primary stories he rolls in to talk about. And each one of those, he'll talk on it for about 3 to 7 minutes. And then he moves on to the next topic. And so what it did is it made it obvious to me that we could break this into snippets. So this is the big learning, that because originally I was thinking long form. And people would say, no, you got to shorten it up. You got to create video clips. And I'm like, oh God, that just sounds like so much work. And I don't have time for that. And I want to talk about the next thing in the next podcast episode. And so what I discovered, though, that everything I've been being told before was right. I had to do all of that work. It was necessary to grow the audience. And so I started doing that for Hacksaw. So we now take the full podcast, which for him are roughly about an hour and a half, sometimes an hour. And then I will break those into video clips of 3 to 7 minutes for each one of Hacksaw's headlines, each topic on the table. And then on top of it, what I've done is that for Hacksaw is we'll take like the 3 or 4 best of those stories. And then I record a vertical short video. You've seen them kind of like more portrait than landscape. A vertical short video of 60 seconds or less. And we do those. So I'm now learning the best way to do this is to start with the content and write it out. And that's what Hacksaw does too. He writes everything first. And then that's how he kind of organizes his thoughts, gets his ideas down on paper, and has topics on the table that he carries through on a consistent basis. So as a result, this podcast episode, I did a blog on it first, and it's on my website, johnrileyproject.com, in the ideas section. And that's a blog, and I've written some blogs in the past, and I'm trying to write more. I'm trying to adopt the learnings that I've gotten from Hacksaw, kind of in these topics on the table and having these 1-paragraph blips. And if you're interested in this sort of thing, I did that. I've been doing that now for the last 3 or 4 weeks to try to sort of build the habit. And then when I come in to do the podcast episode, it's easy. I don't have to really overthink it because I've already done the hard work. That's the way to do it. And then to take those existing, 8 to 10 stories and then repurpose them in different ways. So you take those topics and then it's inside the long form conversation. You have a video clip for it. You create a 60-second or less vertical version of it. You've got a written version of it in the blog, and you can take pieces of that written version and you can drop it in as a tweet or put it in Facebook, etc. So I'm trying to do that with John Riley Project, but I've been running out of time because I've been doing so much of that work for Hacksaw. But for the most part, a lot of my challenge was between my own ears, that I would create mental blocks that would get in my own way. And so that's what I've been working also, is trying to tear those down so that I can focus more on writing. And then once I got the writing done, then for me, the production of it in a podcast or in a video or in an audio clip or in social media, then it just becomes easy. It just flows, and it makes it for, I think, better content for everyone. So I'm going to try to do that more now. And if I can pull this off, I'm going to be able to get back into my regular John Riley Project rhythm. And I think that would be wonderful for me, speaking selfishly, because this is important to me, but I've been stuck in so many different ways and time constrained. I had been stuck, but at the same time, there are a lot of other people that have been contacting me saying, hey, what happened to you? Where'd you go? We want you back. And these are from people that I know that agree and disagree with me, and because at least I would hope they understand that I'm trying to be fair, and I put it all out on the table and we create a kind of a conversation about this. Okay. So Kevin Kennedy on the live stream had another comment. He says, I hear people say this will lead to a Target being built in Blue Sky Ranch. Yeah, we're talking about Measure H now. And yeah, I mean, ah, all of this is insane. Okay, they're building homes in the farm. There's a proposal to build a fitness club in the farm. Will this open the door potentially for more commercial buildings in Poway, especially in the areas that were previously protected by Prop FF? Maybe, maybe. Because like you can't build a Target at Blue Sky Ranch unless the voters vote because it's part of Prop FF. Okay. Will Prop FF be removed as law? Will it be overturned? Very unlikely. I mean, almost less than 1% chance of that happening. But do I think that in general, not just in Poway, but just in general, are we going to see more development of housing and commercial property and fitness clubs and targets in previously open space? Definitely. And we have to do it because the population is rising. We have to build more because to meet that demand, we have to build more so it's not so freaking expensive. And we have to just recognize reality that the population is growing and there's more people, and you have to handle that. Does that mean I think they're going to put a Target in Blue Sky Ranch? No, they're not. I mean, less than 0.1% chance of that happening. But of course, people in social media, the hysteria will come out and they're going to say the sky is falling. They'll hate it all. But, it is a fact of life. I mean, if you roll the clock back here in Poway, roll it back 100 years, 50 years, Poway was a lot different then. And there were a lot of places in Poway that was open space. And now there's a Target and a wall and a parking lot there, or there's housing there, or, there's a business park there, or it's just the steady progression of time and of human civilization. And I know there's a lot of people in Poway that just want to say no more. Pete Neal reminds me, we came to Poway because they wanted to keep out the development. We came to Poway because they passed these rules so that we couldn't turn this into Claremont Mesa or Mira Mesa. Okay, I understand that. I mean, if I could wave my magic wand, I would prevent anybody from building anywhere so I can protect my view. And so I have no traffic. But the reality is that other people have lives and they're pursuing their happiness. And many want to live in Poway and grow their family here. And there's very few places to buy or to rent, and it's expensive. And now they're building more. And it's just the natural progression of time. Some people have had it and they're leaving Poway. They're moving. I mean, I know some people in Poway that moved to Coeur d'Alene and Idaho, have moved to Florida and places. Hate to say that. If you don't like it, move. But in general, that's kind of the way it works, right? I mean, humans have been moving and growing and progressing over centuries, over millennia. And even our hometown of Poway has gone through multiple phases of its growth. And to assume that you can hit the pause button and freeze building in Poway, or even to minimize it, is being unrealistic to the world around you. Because cities everywhere in San Diego County are allowing more development because there's a housing crisis. Housing prices have gotten expensive, makes it hard on young people, first-time home buyers. It's how we have a homeless crisis. People on drugs and alcohol, or people with mental issues, a lot of them were able to rent before when it was cheap. But prices keep going up and up and up, and then people have a streak of bad luck, and next thing you know, they're homeless. Some of them may not have any addiction issues or mental health issues. They just got into a bad spot because it got too expensive and they couldn't afford their next rent payment. And it's all of the anti-development forces that are making the rent too damn high. And I don't know if people really understand that connection about how the market works. So that's why I'm just generally build more. Let property owners have the freedom to build on their property, provided they're not harming anyone else. They're not building a chemical plant or a nuclear reactor. We're just talking about housing. We're talking about a fitness center. Just let people build. And then I think property rights are protected, and we begin to see, granted, a fitness club isn't going to change the housing crisis, but that whole development will. It's only like, I don't know, roughly speaking, a couple hundred homes, but every little bit helps. And, by the way, have you noticed that in San Diego County, the rent is going down? Rent prices are coming down because vacancy rates are increasing. Vacancy rates used to be 3%. Now, because of all the new construction, it's 6%. This is what I'm talking about, is that now when you have more open places, more vacancies, more empty homes and empty apartments that are for sale and for rent, now suddenly the landlord doesn't have as much competition. Now, right now, a landlord or a person selling a home, they'll probably get 10 people interested, 20 people interested, get multiple offers, a competitive race to see who's going to get that property. But because the market is skewed to their advantage, because there's not enough supply, there's not enough inventory, and NIMBYs are making that landlord rich. They might not know it, they may not realize it, but they are. If we build more, prices will relax, hopefully come down more, but at minimum, not skyrocket, maybe sort of stabilize. But in many cases, I think go down the more we have competitive opportunities to shop from. And I think that's a good thing. So, Kevin, I don't think we need to worry about building a Target in Blue Sky Ranch, but I think I did see that comment. People with their hair on fire, upset about all of this. Okay, friends, this has been an hour and 42 minutes. This is fun. I'm glad I did this. I haven't done a podcast episode in 3 months. So I'm really happy I did this. I want to try to get back on board. I had a lot more to say on the election locally and nationally, and I've been doing a lot of that on social media. So if you want to learn more, just follow me on social media. Go to my website, johnrileyproject.com. There you can sign up on my mailing list. And you can get access to my blog articles and my previous episodes and a lot of other content that's there, including a journal about how I started my podcast. Or if you want to, you just want to go to connectwithjohnny.com. Connectwithjohnny.com. There's all the links to all my social media platforms where you can connect and follow and subscribe and share on all of those good things. So anyways, friends, thanks. Hope election day goes good. Hopefully no one gets hurt in the chaos after the election. Hopefully it's all peace and sane. So good voting out there, friends. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.